If you're familiar with this channel, then it shouldn't come as a surprise that I'm a fan of Sonic the Hedgehog. With a couple of exceptions, I've played most games in the main series and still come back to a lot of them to this day. They're among the first things to come to mind when talking about my most replayed games ever. With that in mind, something like Sonic Origins might not seem all that appealing to someone like me at first glance. A collection of the main 4 classic Sonic games for modern platforms, you say? Well, I can already play these games whenever I want, so why should I buy it? What is there on offer that I haven't already gotten by this point? Why this instead of Sonic Unleashed on PC? However, as more information came out, it was apparent that Sonic Origins was ready to answer those questions, except maybe that last one, with various gameplay improvements and added content, some of which I never would have seen coming. I was still a bit hesitant since there were some business issues with this game that I'll talk about later, and we did come off the heels of another disastrous re-release, but eventually I did pre-order the digital deluxe version on Steam. I'll just say the costs were partially covered by AAA's donation or something. Thanks a lot, man. So now that the collection is in my hands, am I glad I bought it? And would I say that you should do the same? To get down to brass tacks, let's start with how the games themselves, those being Sonic the Hedgehog, Sonic 2, Sonic CD, and Sonic 3 and Knuckles, are presented here. Simply put, this collection contains what I consider to be the best officially released versions of these games. Any previous time that these games were re-released, fans would often bring up the superior Christian Whitehead versions and lament that they were only available on mobile and not on console or Steam, besides Sonic CD. It was also a shame that the fan favorite Sonic 3 and Knuckles had barely been re-released in over a decade. Sonic Origins rectifies these mistakes by providing retro engine versions of Sonic 1, 2, CD, and for the first time 3 and Knuckles, and if you're familiar with those versions, then you should know what makes them so much better. The games are now in native widescreen, which is a valuable addition considering that visibility is one of the most often brought up issues with 2D Sonic games. Progress automatically saves upon finishing an act, or now just reaching a checkpoint apparently, allowing you to pick up where you left off later. The special stages play more smoothly than they do on the original Genesis thanks to more advanced technology, and the occasions of in-level slowdown that would sometimes occur in the originals are absent as well. A proper spin dash has been retroactively added to certain games, as have Tails and Knuckles as playable characters. There are even more improvements that I haven't listed here, and taking them all into account, it's no wonder that fans have been clamoring for Sega to re-release these versions so much. All of this is pretty cool on its own, but Sonic Team went a few extra steps to try and make these games ever so slightly better than the mobile versions. The drop dash from Sonic Mania has made its way into all of these games, further enhancing the game's sense of speed and flow. The live system has been removed, and where you would normally collect lives and continues, you now get coins. I could joke about the confusion between rings and coins, but I can't think of anything clever enough. It's a neat way to remove the stress of getting a game over while still incentivizing you to get 100 rings, score points, poke around in stages, etc. One of my personal favorite additions is how you can use these coins to retry the special stages. These stages could be pretty frustrating in the original games and still are to an extent in Origins, so being able to retry them for a fee is a nice gesture. There are a number of other small tweaks, like how leaving the special stages in Sonic 2 no longer resets your in-stage ring count, and there's also now a dedicated button for activating Supersonic. The most novel new feature of all is definitely the fully animated cutscenes at the beginning and end of each game. The animation quality of these is really slick and appealing, and despite not having any voice acting, they do a better job contextualizing the events of each game much better than the originals did, especially in the cases of Sonic 1 and 2. You pretty much had to read the manual to fully understand what was going on in those games. They even do a bit to bridge the gap between games, which is a cool detail on its own, but even more crucial for the newly introduced story mode, where you play all 4 games back to back as Sonic. Speaking of story mode, I should note that all the above improvements apply to the Anniversary mode specifically, and that each game also comes with a Classic mode. Classic mode is just a modified Anniversary mode, removing certain features like the drop dash, reverting the aspect ratio back to 4:3, and adding back the original continue system. As such, it's not quite authentic to the original, as it still has some of the tweaks of the retro engine versions, which kind of defeats the purpose when you think about it. It might even make CD actively worse since there's no camera panning and no widescreen to make up for it. If they truly wanted Classic mode to be the authentic Genesis experience, then I would have included an emulation of the original ROMs to satisfy purists, and allow you to adjust the Anniversary mode's features as you see fit. If you want to play the games in widescreen with the original live system, they should let you do that, yet they don't. Beyond these 2 main modes, each game also has a couple of extra ways to play. The boss rush mode is what it sounds like, making you fight every boss from one of the games with limited rings and lives. It's fine for what it is, but it's not really something that needed to be here since the bosses are far from what I would call the highlight of these games. There is also a mirror mode you can unlock, but this is just weird and tacky more than anything else. It throws off my muscle memory sometimes, but doesn't have much value beyond that. Weirdly enough, there's a time attack option in the menus of Sonic CD, but it's not available in any of the other games. The best you're going to get is the ability to replay acts in the leaderboard section. Finally, Sonic 3 and Knuckles comes with a Blue Sphere side mode where you can generate and play through Blue Sphere special stage levels. It's not something that I'd be especially interested in, but considering it was already a bonus feature of Sonic and Knuckles, this is something that the collection might have felt emptier without. There's even a new Blue Spheres mode with more stages and new mechanics, and I thought that was pretty neat. These alternate ways to play the games are okay, but Anniversary mode is still the star of the show. The content doesn't stop with the games themselves though. There's also a series of missions that are reminiscent of the side missions in Sonic Generations, small bits of levels from the 4 games with tweaked design and different objectives. There's a surprising amount of variance in these tasks, like destroying floating animal capsules, using invincibility power-ups to collect rings in otherwise dangerous traps, getting enough points in a section of Casino Night Zone, clearing a part of a stage as Mini Sonic, and much more. You're also ranked in these based on your performance, and getting higher ranks earns you more coins, and lots of them. Seriously, I've earned hundreds just by playing these missions, and I still haven't beaten them all. With some exceptions, the missions I've played so far have been really easy to S-rank, although I've heard that the later ones get pretty brutal. While these missions are not the most transformative thing ever, the creativity in them is still pretty commendable, and I enjoyed them for what they were. As is typical for these kinds of game collections, you've also got a museum mode where you can look at classic Sonic related artwork, listen to the game's music, and watch videos including the aforementioned animated cutscenes, as well as all 6 episodes of the Sonic Mania Adventures miniseries. Getting to browse through concept art and music is great since these games have rock solid art and music direction, and you can even read the manuals for the games in the art section. A good portion of these have to be unlocked by accomplishing certain tasks in the game, as well as spending coins, but considering how much is on offer here and how easy it is to earn coins, as I've said, I don't have a problem with that. One other cool thing about the museum mode is that you can make up to 5 playlists of music to listen to while browsing. It kind of makes up for how little music was composed specifically for Origins. That said, for some reason the later games in the sound test have the wrong names given to their music tracks. Seems like a bizarre oversight, but it's not the only issue slipping through the cracks of Sonic Origins. Yeah, despite how much I've praised this collection, it unfortunately comes with a dark underside. As soon as the trailer for Sonic Origins was dropped, it was evident that while the games themselves may be in good hands, Sega's handling of the collection wasn't so foolproof. The first issue is the $40 price tag it's going for right now. Purely based on how much is in here, I find that price to be not necessarily terrible, but more than I think the average game collection of this sort would go for, and plenty of reviews agree with me on that front. I'll put some comparisons on screen to illustrate what I mean. The ace in Origins hole is that the games are being remade instead of emulated, but it's still not as much of an overhaul as, say, the Crash and Spyro trilogy remakes were, which were also $40 each, I might add. I mean, even the Whitehead version of CD was only $5, as were the Genesis versions of the other classic Sonic games on Steam. Not that Sega wants us to think about that, since they removed most digital versions of the games in the weeks before Origins release. Yeah, even Sega knows they're charging too much for this. With all this in mind, I think even $30 would have been a lot more acceptable for something like this. There are some fine additions to this collection, but I'd argue they're not worth 20 big ones. Besides the high price, we also got this mess of a DLC chart, showing us what features are only available through DLC and or pre-ordering the game. Sounds harmless, but most of these features are too insignificant to justify locking them past DLC, like camera controls over the main menu islands, something you're probably only going to fidget with for 30 seconds, locked behind the Premium Fun Pack and Digital Deluxe. Speaking of, the island menus of these games have caused a lot of performance issues for PC players, myself included, and it apparently has to do with Origins using the integrated graphics card as opposed to the dedicated graphics card. If you have an AMD or Nvidia GPU, then there are guides out there on how to get the menus to run more smoothly. The problem for me is, my laptop has integrated graphics as its only GPU, so I'm stuck with menus that scroll at the speed of molasses. But that's my problem. It doesn't necessarily mean mean it'll affect you. Sadly, even the games themselves aren't completely free of issues. While this isn't quite a Sonic Colors Ultimate situation, I have seen a lot of reports of glitches occurring in these games, most notably Sonic 3. The first common one I've seen is how the debris in Marble Garden in Act 1 that appears when the tunnel ball burrows into the ground doesn't stop when it's supposed to. Honestly, it feels like it could be a stylistic choice, but the fact that it stops if you enter and exit a special stage tells me that it's not. The second one is that it doesn't time out. Enough said. I've seen a lot of other glitch reports going around, and while I personally haven't noticed a whole lot of glitches per se in what playthroughs I've done, the experience as a whole felt less comfortable than normal for various reasons. Perhaps it's on me, and the examples I'm showing on screen aren't exclusive to the Origins versions. These games have always had bugs after all, but it's still something I felt as I was playing. Not to mention that a remaster should ideally fix what's broken. I wouldn't classify this stuff as game-breaking, but the glitches suggest that this version of Sonic 3 and K was rushed out, a sentiment that was affirmed by Stealth himself. Apparently it got even more unpolished after they sent it to Sega as the cherry on top. Maybe some of the glitches will get patched out in the future, but given Sonic Team's track record with post-release support, I wouldn't place my bets on it. Besides the glitches, the music is also a point of contention with this version of 3 and Knuckles. This was somewhat predictable. A select few of the tracks in the original retail Sonic 3 were made with the uncredited help of Michael Jackson, and licensing issues regarding those tracks have warded Sega off from re-releasing Sonic 3 until now. For Origins, Jun Tsunoe was brought on to recreate the non-MJ prototype music, which had previously appeared in the Sonic & Knuckles collection for PC, but the results are a bit underwhelming. On their own, I suppose these tracks could have been worse, but what makes them disappointing is that a few years back, an actual Sonic 3 prototype was discovered with these same beta tracks, except made with a much better handle on the Genesis sound chip. Why Sega couldn't use these versions, I don't understand. It's also clear to me that the people who made this Sonic 3 and K remaster weren't able to tweak the other remasters, which would have benefited from a few changes. For one thing, Knuckles wasn't a playable character in the 2011 version of CD, and still isn't available here, which is a glaring omission compared to the other games, and a shame because I imagine these levels would be pretty fun to explore as him. The implementation of the drop dash in the games besides 3 is a bit slapdash, as when Sonic touches the ground he stands straight for one frame and does a single charge spin dash. I know that's really nitpicky, but it nonetheless isn't the case in Mania, or Origins version of 3 for that matter. As long as I'm nitpicking, why can't I skip the end of level score tally in Sonic 1, 2, or CD? I want to get back to the action. What also feels off to me is the lack of graphical options. There are different borders you can use in classic mode, but of course only by pre-ordering the game. But there aren't any options for smoothing the picture or adding CRT scanlines or anything like that, which are options that other Sonic releases have included, by the way. All you can really do is make the game even blurrier by enabling anti-aliasing. I say even blurrier because for one reason or another, even the default picture, on PC at least, isn't as sharp as it could be. I had to go out of my way to notice it, but if I blow up a screenshot of Sonic 3 and Knuckles being run in Origins, you can see that the pixels are blurred together. Compare that to a screenshot of Sonic Mania at a similar resolution, which still interpolates pixels to prevent scaling issues but still looks a bit sharper than Origins. This image of a single pixel from both games is probably the best I can show you to demonstrate what I mean. I'm sure some of you still don't know what I'm talking about here, and that's fine, don't burst your brain cells or anything. I'm just saying that it's not as good as it could be. And that's kind of where I stand regarding Sonic Origins as a whole, really. I don't want to be overly dramatic since I think it's a solid collection, but I can see the ways it could have been even better with more time and effort. The ultimate reality is that something like this, or at least the mobile versions of Sonic 1 and 2, had every right to come out on console and Steam years ago, and not just as a hasty response to the unexpected success of the Sonic movie. Personally, given the already existing fan-made effort to provide a similar experience, I might end up uninstalling this collection after this video's out because there's not much here that matters to me that I can't get elsewhere. It's 6.5 gigabytes that I could probably find better use for, and I don't want to deal with these slow menus. The most valuable thing to me is the ability to retry special stages, but I've gotten all the Chaos Emeralds in each game countless times already. Nevertheless, I recognize that those other versions that I'm more likely to go back to aren't all official beneficial, nor are they the most viable for a lot of people to get, especially if you're a console player. For those people, if the $40 price tag doesn't scare you away, this collection is worth checking out in my opinion, especially if you've never played these games or the Sonic series and are looking for a place to start. The games included are all still a lot of fun to this day, and this collection only helps to make them even more approachable for a modern audience. I'm glad that Sega is finally recognizing the merits of the Whitehead versions of these games, and a lot of the new additions they've put in on top show to me that this collection as a whole shouldn't just be dismissed as a lazy cash grab. I just can't help but look at what blemishes are there and think of the potential that was missed. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, consider leaving a like, comment, or even one of those brand spanking new super thanks if you're feeling bold. In any case, I hope you have a pleasant day.